But Monday, John, was the big Trey Lance pro day. And we broke down every throw that we had access to via the videographer of North Dakota State, thanks to that person. The question now is, the pro days are done. The draft is a week from Thursday. The travel is over. Time to head back to the office. Do the 49ers know who they're drafting?
You know what's funny is I'm laying in bed last night. I got in bed pretty early, like Tom Brady style, like 8:45. And I look at my phone. It's like, did you hear anything from North Dakota today? And it's Greg Papa. I said, no. Did you hear anything? Like, Kyle ain't texting me. What? No. I mean, did you watch the clips that I watched? I mean, I don't know. So I think it's fair to say is everyone's out of the loop on this. And two, like, that was a big day. I think these pro days, you know, I'd even argue back to Mac when they went, Justin Fields, and clearly on Monday, were big moments in this search. Like, I don't think, you know, on a typical year when guys go to pro days, I don't know how much truly is there because you get this thing called the top 30 visit, meaning you can bring 30 players to you. And if the Niners had a top 30 visit, I think it's fair to say that Mac, Trey Lance, and Justin Fields would have guaranteed, you know, once they made the trade, they would have been brought out. All three would have got private workouts with probably Kyle, McDaniels, and Scangarello, and probably John Lynch there too, right? And
Jordan Matthews.
those aren't possible. Like that, they don't exist. So I think the Niners, and we talked about this on Sunday, like I think they created this, and it's more and more national people are saying, yeah, the Niners kind of ran this, specifically the Trey Lance one. Like they ran the workout. We had talked about the Justin Fields because that just felt like the momentum was there. It was so sweet. But then you really kind of take a step back. You start putting the pieces of the puzzle. You're like, well, they told him to get with John Beck the moment they made the trade. That's nothing. That's not nothing. Jordan Matthew was his wide receiver there. They ran the workout, basically. It's like, has Trey Lance been their guy the whole time? The thing I'll be fascinated, if Trey Lance is the pick, they made that pick knowing his talent, the more and more he did a pro day and got in front of other coaches and GMs, he would never be there at 12. And they didn't want to risk, who knows if they get to 6. Maybe they get into a bidding process on draft night because as I text with Greg, he's like, we're talking about Mac Jones and like, I get it. He processes well and he's got little good feet in the pocket. You can't convince me that they couldn't have got Mac Jones at 6. Like, why wouldn't they have just done one first rounder on draft night?
I think if it turns out I like where you're going with this because if they do draft Trey Lance, what you just said is part of what they were talking about when they talked about paying a premium, right? They weren't just talking about trading up to number 3 on Thursday night while the Jags are on the clock and then the Jets draft and then we have a trade. They weren't just talking about that. They were also talking about today. They were talking about what happens after everyone gets more time to dive into Trey Lance, after everybody gets to watch Trey Lance. What happens then, right? This is, to your point, like John Lynch is kind of not – he's not just saying we think the price would have gone up on draft day. We think the price might have gone up a week before. And right now – today, after Trey Lance's pro day, it'd be a lot harder to get to 3 than it was then. Or maybe it even costs, maybe there's just more competition for that pick.
Because you know why it is? Because coaches and most GMs on a normal year don't get to see the guy in person. That usually happens at the combine. And that's why trades sometimes happen after the combine. Because Trey Lance walks into your the way they do it at the combine, it's like this, it's like a hotel, but it's built through a railroad, like railroad cars, like train cars, but like individual rooms. It's kind of weird.
It's like a novelty thing.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's kind of stupid at the same time. And you have these little rooms. Remember the visual a couple years ago when Pete Carroll rips off a shirt with DK? The rooms are relatively small. Like they're tiny. They're not conference rooms. I'd call them like a small little motel room.
Little suites almost.
Yeah, but they yank everything out and they basically just put some chairs in there for everyone to sit around. Well, what happens the moment at one of those things, typically when a guy, like the moment Cam Newton started walking into rooms when he was, in 2011, you and I stood by him and you marvel at his size. Can you imagine the first time Ron Rivera shook Cam Newton's hand? Just had to think to himself, even if he's like, he's a little inaccurate, like, holy shit, right? That's you honestly, you can't meet Cam Newton and not say anything else in the back of your mind, like, holy shit, that's an enormous human being.
Yeah.
Trey Lance you kind of notice that in the pro day, right? Doesn't have the pads on. He's kind of there by himself. Like, God, he looks pretty big.
Thick legs.
Right? Yeah. Can you imagine once he starts meeting, like, hey, I'm Arthur Smith. Hey, I'm Bill Belichick. And they just start meeting him. That, to me, is a game changer. Same with Justin Fields. He's a thicker guy. And that's the thing with Mac. He's 6'2.5", right? He's not blowing you away. Now, his tape's good, but then you meet him and you go, God, looks like Jimmy Garoppolo or something, right? Where Trey Lance walks in, you're like, this is a big fucking dude.
Yeah.
And that to me is where I think guys get nervous, is once we start introducing ourselves to people, shaking their hands, seeing their body size, because then they can go, God, if I've coached in the league for 20 years, what good and bad players, you got to feel for just body types. That moves the needle, right or wrong, because you can say the tape. Well, that's true. But then once I meet you, like if Zach Wilson walks in the room, they're like, God, he's a lot bigger than I thought. That's a good thing for him because tape was already good. That's why once he measured in, they're like, God, our concerns were like, we loved him when we thought he might be 6'1.5". Now he's 6'2". We're like, okay.
Did you ever
good.
feel like when you would scout a guy that you'd seen on tape that his arm could look better or worse in person than it did on tape?
Yeah, I think if you have a strong arm, it mostly looks pretty good in person. If you have an average arm, it looks. I think it rings pretty true.
You don't think the tape lies on arm strength? Because I feel like you can tell pretty quickly.
I remember going to a Raider Chiefs game and walking out to midfield to say what's up to Nagy, who was the quarterback coach at the time. He was standing right next to Alex, and I go up and hug him, and he's like, "Hey, Alex was pretty focused, like he wasn't really bullshitting, so I wasn't even trying to talk to him, but Alex kind of gave me one of these. But then when Alex throws it, you're like, if I was playing catch for them, it's not as soft of a ball as you think, but it's no different than like if you stood next to a guy throwing 90, you wouldn't go, oh, that's a pussy fastball, right?
Right.
But if you put a guy throwing 100 right next to the 90, it would look dramatic. If I would have put Mahomes right next to Alex, it wouldn't look as great. So it's all relative. I think when you throw it hard, though, and you're in person, it really stands out. So like Fields and Lance, they have a strong arm. It probably looks pretty good standing there right next to it. And Kyle got to see that. And so do the other coaches, right?
I think, yes, but only one team is sitting at 3. I think that it will be interesting to see after the draft, whoever they pick, will Kyle in any way tip his hand? It would be tipping his hand for his future, however he operates in the future. Will he say, we knew when we made will he say, we knew when we made this trade, we did it for this guy? Now, you might just say it even if it's not true just because it sounds good, right?
And the difference is I do think we treat quarterbacks in the draft trading up a little different than probably any other position, right? How often does
You're saying he could be honest and it wouldn't really hurt anything?
the magnitude, if you just think about like in our adult lives, like a Julio Jones move, they're very, very rare, right? To put all your chips in the middle of the table for one individual, it's always going to be a quarterback. Unless it's a veteran trade, I think these type of moves happen for Khalil Mack or Jalen Ramsey, but those guys get shopped like they would a house, right? Guys, it's open for bidding. Come give us your fucking. We might trade Khalil Mack. Let us know your offers, right?
Yeah.
Where I think with the quarterbacks, you kind of there's just so much. You got to be so secret about everything when it comes to draft moves until post draft, and then no one even cares.
There was also this addition since he threw. Mel Kiper now has Justin Fields going to the 49ers in his latest mock draft. Mel Kiper, who's been on this podcast before. And
who are you leaning with right now?
I'm still with Lance.
I feel like it's Lance too.
I'm still with Lance, but
in a weird way, sometimes you get on these text chains with people like a Greg Papa. Now I feel like maybe Mac Jones has a better chance to come to Justin Fields. But then someone tells me that Justin Fields is the guy who's fed me information that's good. I have never felt less confident about anything on this.
Well,
my pick is Lance, but I don't feel like we talked about yesterday, betting on it and thinking about it. Like there is still a large part of my body, the anticipation for this pick is still really high.
I know. Same for me. And I do think if like right now you go back and watch our conversation with Klatt, if I went back and watched our conversation with Klatt right now, I right now, Guy Haberman, 30 minutes from now, might disagree with Guy Haberman right now. And go, I don't know. This Fields thing is. That's why I don't blame Mel when his mock draft changes. I don't like. All that matters is who they take, and then we can sift through, the pre-draft wreckage afterwards. But, in terms of an entertainment product, like I think I got a guess, but I don't feel like I absolutely know.
Totally agree.
How could you at this point?
You know the great part about Mel's job or DJ's job or Mayock's job for all those years? They can do whatever they want. There is no, and this is where I think the pushback from the NFL comes back. Like the NFL people, it's like they don't really have a skin in the game. Like some people make fun of them on Twitter. Where in the NFL, they do create public, and we do too, just beliefs and sentiment and stuff. And yet the team was never doing that. So for teams drafting high, like you start putting thoughts in the public's mind when you have no clue. And maybe Mel knows, maybe DJ knows, but I'm just saying a lot of times with mock drafts, most of them are always wrong, beside maybe the first pick or two, right? But it's like, I thought we were going to get this guy. And then it's like, no, we were never going to draft that guy.
Yeah.
It is a tough spot. There aren't many professions where you're going to do something and the entire media's job is just guessing, and it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong, yet they do create the narratives around players for the fan base who then emotionally reacts positive or negatively based on what they've been reading or hearing leading up to that draft, even though the teams say nothing.
Yeah. The good part is eventually the games get played. And then the evidence becomes, for the most part, irrefutable. Right?
But there's like a mark on the player if it starts off bad in the public's eye, right? Listen, if Mac is the quarterback, he's going to be fighting an uphill battle, right?
But look, yes, absolutely. But it's been this way in the history since Sandy Koufax got $50,000 and called up to the big leagues right away, right? There used to be this phrase, bonus baby, where guys came right to the big leagues. I mean, there was pressure on them in those days. In their environment, that was pressure. This is just our version of pressure now.
There has always been, you hit it on the head. If you perform and you win, whether it's Sandy Koufax, bonus baby, whether it's Cleveland Farrell a couple years ago, they took him if he had been good, no one would give a shit. Honestly, the team would get more credit, right? When you shoot a guy up, it's like, damn, are they really bringing Tim Lincecum up this fast? Cy Young, yes, they did, right? And Chris Bryant, when they held him down. Part of the reason that became such a big deal because Chris Bryant got up there and was good. If he was shitty, it would have been like, well, who even cares, right?
Yeah.
If you're good, none of the conversation before matters. Where if you're bad, though, and you could argue that's on the team, like the Tua conversation, like that's on them to get it right or wrong, right? Because they got a lot of credit. They got a lot of credit, right?
When they made the pick.
It's like he fell to 5. He wasn't going to go number 1.